What's up guys, and welcome back to the channel. My name is Priscilla and it is another pattern tutorial. So this is a highly requested one for the blazer dress I believe I made last year. So I've done the tutorial for you guys, but I excluded the sleeve because I have a separate video to make the sleeve for this pattern. If you guys would like to see how I made it, keep watching. Thank you so much for the love on my previous video. I think it was the how to make a pleated skirt. You guys really love that project and I'm really thankful because all of this is worth it because you guys appreciate my work and I'm very grateful for that. Your support, your comments, your views, your emojis, everything. So if you'd like to see how I made this, keep watching. If you aren't subscribed already, please subscribe. Comment down below if you enjoyed the video and give it a thumbs up if you want more pattern tutorials. And without further ado, let's jump straight into this tutorial. You need the following tools to work on this pattern project. You need your basic bodice block, front and back. I have a separate video for that. You need some pattern paper, your pattern master, your rulers, pens, as well as other necessary tools. You also decide how long you want your blazer dress to be. I decided to work with about 31 inches, and the first thing you need to do is to trace around the back bodice block. You can start from the front and the back, it doesn't really matter. Just said start from the back because the back is slightly easier to create in comparison to the front. So I'm just taping down my bodice block onto some fresh pattern paper underneath so it doesn't move around when I am working on this particular part of the pattern. So once that is all taped down, I'm going to go in with my marker pen and trace around crucial corners. So also transferring points like the waistline, the bust line and the hip line because you want them to be accurate on your new pattern. So once that is done, I'm going to go in with my pattern master and trace out like the entire back. So around the armhole, the shoulder, the waist, the curve, the neckline, everything. The next thing you need to do is to mark your new length. So I'm working with 31 inches. That's inclusive of the hem for the dress, and connect the hip line to your new length. But once you get to the end, don't just square it out, make it slightly curved because then it hugs your body a bit more. So after that, I'm going to mark my 1 inches hem allowance on the side seam and on the center back, so I know I need to mark a notch there when I'm cutting out the actual dress. So the next thing to do is to mark your darts because we want the blazer dress to be a little bit fitted. So I'm using a pin to puncture a hole through the block into the new pattern paper underneath, and then I'm going to mark a tiny dot or a cross of that hole. So I'm going to repeat that same process for the top, the bottom and the 2 points that sort of create that dart shape on the back bodice. This is something I learned in one of my internships, and God bless that woman for passing on this knowledge because it's made my life so much easier. But once you're done marking all the points, all you really need to do is just connect them, and it's so easy. So just connect one side to the other using your marker pen and a ruler. Don't forget to fill up those sort of blank spaces that the scotch tape created, as well as draw in your waistline. So the waistline should pass through the middle of the dart. I'm drawing in my bust line and my hip line as well because those points are going to become notches along the side seam of the bodice. So I'm just writing in annotations. We're going to cut this piece on a fold, it's the back, and I would need just one piece because we don't want a seam in the center back of the blazer dress. So I'm just going ahead to add my 1 centimeter seam allowance. You can add 1 inch, whatever works for you. I just find that 1 centimeter is usually enough to join the different pieces of a dress together. So once I'm done adding all of this, I'm just going to cut it out of the pattern paper to have the actual pattern itself. So you cut along the second line, not the first line, because we want to keep that 1 centimeter seam allowance. So when that is done, I'm going to create a back neck facing because we want the neckline to be finished nicely. So in my facing, I think I made it about 6 inches wide. You can make yours wider if you want, but I'm just marking that on the center back and on the shoulder because we're going to draw a curved shape like this onto another pattern paper that is underneath. So the one thing you need to do is to trace out the neckline, the center back line and the shoulder line. because you want the facing to fit the back of the dress, especially along the neck and the shoulder. The bottom is not really important, but you want that neckline and that shoulder line to fit perfectly. So I'm just writing down what it is and cutting it out as well. So once that is all cut down, don't forget to add how many you need to cut, include that fold line and the grain line as well. So the next pattern we'll be working on is the front, which is the baba of this tutorial, and I'm just going ahead to repeat the same thing I did for the back. So we tape down the bodice, we trace around it, you increase the length to 31 inches, you draw in the waist, hip and bust line, and you mark your dots before going ahead to change up the center front, which is where the real magic is. So the first thing you need to do is to extend your waistline outwards by 10 to 15 centimeters, depending on how much you want that thing to really wrap around in the front. So I decided on 10 because it doesn't cross over the dot when it's wrapped around. So once you've marked that, you extend the line downwards and connect it to the hem, to the hip and to the waistline, because that is going to become your new sort of front. After that, you connect that waist to the neck, because we want to make a collar that would sit along that front slant, but we can't do it with the old neckline. So you connect that shoulder point to that extended point along the waistline. So after that, I'm just going to add my 1 centimeter seam allowance. You can do this now or you can do it after we've done the collar and the facing. It doesn't really matter, but I'm just going ahead to do it all the way around the pattern, along the front, along the sides. Don't add to the bottom because we've already added 1 inch hem allowance along the bottom, but you add 1 centimeter around everywhere else. So after that is done, this is what the front panel should look like. I have also indicated those tiny arrows, which is the grain line. That is the direction you should cut this pattern on fabric. I've written what it is, how many pieces I need. You need 2 fronts to create that wraparound effect that you see in the sewing tutorial for this particular pattern. I would link it down below so you guys can check that out as well. Just going ahead to cut it out, cutting along the second line, which includes the seam or hem allowances in this case. So once I've cut that all the way around, it would be easier for me to create the facing and the collar. For the front facing, we're going to repeat a similar step for the back. That is getting some fresh pattern paper underneath and tracing along the neck and the center front. You also need to include the waist and the hip lines. After you've marked those points, we're going to connect the dots together. So this particular line is that front slant that you saw on the center front of the blazer front or the blazer pattern, and you connect the hem. But the hem, you make it at least 1 inch shorter because it's going to be inside of the front of the blazer dress, so you wouldn't really see it. As for the inside, you can make it straight or you can make it curved like I'm doing here. It doesn't really matter because you finish that off by overlocking, or you attach the edge of that facing to lining if you want. So I'm just including a grain line and writing down important points such as my waist, my hip, the hem, and how many pieces I need to cut. So in this case, we would need 2 front facings to go with the 2 front pieces of the blazer dress. This is what it looks like after I've cut it out, and the next pattern we need to make is a shawl collar pattern, which would sit along the front and the back of the dress. So what you need to do basically is similar to what I did for the facing. We're going to get pattern paper underneath and trace along that front slant like I'm doing here, as well as mark where that pattern ends in the front and the shoulder point, because we're going to draw either a curve or a triangular shape, whatever shape you want your collar to have. I like this classic curves bottom and sort of straight back. I wanted it to be 3 inches wide. You can make yours even bigger or more elaborate, depends on you, whichever thing works. But once you decided how wide you want it to be, I'm going to draw on the shape. As you can see, I used pencil first just to get it really accurate before going in with the marker pen. And because this collar goes from the front to the back, we're going to extend it by 4 inches so it really sits nicely from the front wrap around all the way to the back and back to the front again. So I had to add extra pattern paper for the pattern to be like one piece and not in separate bits. And then I marked the 4 inches that is half of your back neckline, as well as extend that curved line that became a straight line and square it down into the center back. You can decide to have a seam on your center back, but I decided to just keep it as one piece. So you cut that center back line on the fold and it's just one long collar. So once you've done this, you add your 1 cm seam allowance all the way around, except at that point where I've written fold, because you are going to cut that on the fold. But if you want a seam there, it's fine. Usually you would fuse the collar so it's nice and stiff, but I believe in that project I just cut it on only fabric because I didn't have any fusing. But if you fuse it, which means pressing it on interfacing, it would be nice and stiff. But the grain line is not straight, because if you compare it to your actual pattern, this piece is slightly a little bit 45 degrees off. That's why I drew the grain line on like this. These are the finished pattern. I had a total of 5 pattern pieces. You will need to cut the back on the fold so you have 1 piece. You need 2 pieces for the front. For the collar, you need to cut 2 pieces on a fold. For the front facing, you need 2. For the back facing, you need 1. I hope you guys enjoyed watching this tutorial. If you did, please give it a thumbs up so I know that you guys really love pattern tutorials. If you have any suggestions, questions, or ideas, please ask them down below. And until my next video, keep being creative, and I hope I continue to inspire you with my projects. Have a lovely morning, afternoon, or evening wherever you are. Bye.